Hello, and welcome to 24 albums for 24 hours of runecrafting. What the heck is this? What is this? What is this? So, my friend, who guest starred in the old school RuneScape episodes we made about a month or so ago, is taking on a monumental challenge. He's going to try to grind out runecrafting for 24 hours straight. This is a pretty insane challenge. It's basically doing a fairly repetitive, simple task in a game over and over and over again for 24 hours. I have some pretty complicated feelings around this sort of endurance test, this almost performance art-esque way of playing games. But I think I can kind of understand it. I can understand the joy of like a personal project just sort of grinding through a tedious activity. An example of that is actually this video. As you watch this video, you'll see that I put, if not a lot of work into it, then a lot of kind of tedious work into it, that I just did a lot of things that took a while. I even realized halfway through, like you'll see I made straw poll links for all of the albums that we're going to talk about so that you can let me know how much you like them. And then about halfway through, I was like, man, I probably should have used like Google Forms or something. There's probably a much easier and quicker way to do this that would also allow me to get at the data much more easily, because going through and checking all of the polls is also going to be super tedious if I decide to do that. So it was like, oh man, I'm actually just wasting a whole bunch of time, and yet I didn't change what I was doing. I didn't stop, because I was genuinely enjoying just the process of doing it. Making the slides, making the poll, finding the album art, all of these things, while I listened to the album that I'm putting on the list and thinking about what I'm going to say about it, it was very enjoyable. So I was excited when my friend was telling me that he was going to do this and asked me, are there any albums you'd recommend that I listen to? I was excited to provide what I thought was like a pretty instrumental part, that's I guess a pun, of the experience, which is what you listen to while you're doing it. And I think music is very suited for this sort of long, tedious activity. Unlike a TV show or a podcast or something like that, you don't feel like you really need to follow everything that's happening to kind of understand the narrative. There's not kind of like a drop off of knowledge that will allow you or will prevent you from understanding the album more if you didn't pay enough attention at the start. It's more just that you can kind of jump in and out as your focus waxes and wanes. But that as even if like your kind of focused part of your mind is distracted by the task at hand, the emotional part of your mind, the part that will just kind of respond to the music on a more basic level, is totally wide open to experience the album. So not only do I think his music is well suited to this task, or this sort of task, but I think this sort of task is actually a great opportunity to listen to music. Like it's a good way to kind of approach the medium. Not that I actually expect that he's going to just queue up these 24 albums and listen to them continuously. I'm sure there's other things that he wants to do and listen to during that time anyways. Plus it only adds up to 16 hours, the 24 albums I chose, but whatever. I couldn't help it. It just kind of got away from me, and I had a lot of fun putting this together. Because I figured then why not just make like a whole thing of it, make another video, just, you know, as I am wont to do, to make something of the experience that just goes beyond the specific incident of me recommending music to my friend into something that other people can enjoy too. All right. So yeah, please check them out. I'm going to put a link to this slideshow in the description of this video, and then all the slides have links to the album on YouTube, and a poll where you can vote on how much you liked it. I'm also curious, of course, beyond just the numeric score, what did you like about it? What did you dislike about it? Please let me know in the comments. Some of the videos aren't perfect, like some of the playlists are missing songs, or it's just like not the greatest upload. So if you're curious about an album, you're having difficulty finding it on your own, please reach out to me on Discord. It's probably the easiest way to do it, and I can probably help you out in a way that I am not, of course, suggesting that I'll do anything illegal, but if you want to listen to any of these, please let me know if I can help. Okay, so how did I choose these albums? Well, I didn't really make a complete thorough system of it. It's not like I went through every single album in my library and assessed whether or not it would be a good fit for this project. It's more just that I thought of albums as I thought of them, and then I kind of judged whether or not they would be kind of good under these criteria. So I thought they should be pretty lively. You're going to be crafting away for 24 hours. You don't want something that's going to put you to sleep. So that's not necessarily happy music. It's not necessarily positive music, but it's like kind of upbeat and stimulating, and it'll keep you awake, hopefully. They should be interesting, not just generically good, not just something that I think is high quality, but something that is kind of unique or has weird things about it. Mostly just because I want to see how people respond to these things, and as kind of like a way to distinguish them and kind of make them more memorable. If you're going to be doing some sort of marathon type project, it's good to have things that will stick out in your mind as a way to really kind of signify how long you've been grinding on it and sort of illuminating your progress in some way. So I tried to find albums that I thought had kind of interesting quirks about them. They should be diverse. Across all of the albums I chose, I wanted quite a lot of genre diversity, but then even within the albums, I tried to pick things that weren't just kind of the same song over and over again, but kind of mixed it up a bit to keep things interesting. And there should be some classics in there. So my friend isn't super into music. It's not really a medium that he spent some time exploring, which is fair enough. It's something you kind of have to make an effort to do. So I'm really excited to share with him and with all of you some albums that I consider real classics in their genre, albums that I can't really imagine a time in which I wasn't aware of them already and hadn't heard of them. So it's really exciting for me to hear like a fresh outside perspective on these albums. And it's a good way to kind of start your musical education too, because then when you decide which of these sort of classics you really are drawn to and which ones you like, those are also the real foundations of gigantic movements that have spread out in the years since. So it opens a lot of doors for you in terms of other things you'll like to listen to. Okay, so that's kind of my stipulations, and now we're going to dive into the albums. If you don't feel like getting them spoiled more than the slides already do, feel free to just pause this video and go check them out in the description. But I'm just going to make some remarks and stuff and talk about why I like them and why I chose them. So the first one I chose is 24 Effects. I thought this was another nice parallel. See, I was worried about this, that the camera area would overlap the album art. So I'm just going to do this. That's fine, right? You can still read that fine. So this is a collaborative remix album of the Villainy soundtrack. I put this first on the list because I thought the parallel between 24 Effects, 24 albums, 24 hours, it's all quite nice. We're playing this on the channel right now, and I've talked a lot about how much I love the music, and I think this is my favorite reinterpretation of it, this soundtrack. I'm really interested, if you haven't played Villainy, if you haven't watched the videos of me playing it, if the only thing you have is the music, what do you think of that music? What do you think the game must be like based on the music? I'm very curious about that. There's lots of different electronic styles represented. It's just a variety of amateur musicians that contributed tracks. So there's like breakbeat stuff, there's more kind of downbeat, kind of chill hop type of things. There's more sort of uplifting trance-like tracks. It's all over the map. My favorite is track 4, Endless Station. It's really intense breakcore action, and yet it still has these really wonderful melancholy moments that just sort of emerge from other areas in the game. So this is where you can vote on what you thought of it, and this is where you can listen to it. Easy peasy. Next one we're going to talk about is Sir Lucius Leftfoot, the Son of Chico Dusty by Big Boy, who of course is one half of the legendary Outkast, one of my, actually just hands down my favorite rap duo in history, made many of my favorite hip-hop albums. And a lot of Outkast albums are very, very emotionally balanced, that they'll have kind of some bangers, some much more sentimental and sad tracks, some very kind of profound tracks, some more like kind of experimental, psychedelic almost tracks. They're usually all over the map. But this is just non-stop, super catchy, really well produced bangers. Like I think this album is just a joy to listen to. The lyrics are generally pretty funny, if you want to like kind of eke out that sort of meaning from it. But you know, if you don't and you just want to have a good time listening to some awesome beats, that's fine too. And if you like this and you want that kind of wider emotional range, then you really got to go back and listen to the Outcast classics. I cannot recommend them enough. I found this playlist on YouTube, but it is unfortunately missing some tracks. So again, just use your own initiative if you want to find the complete thing, but this will give you a pretty good sample at least. The next one we're going to talk about is Exit by Fire Orchestra. So this is an orchestra-sized free jazz collective. They have lots of brass players, lots of string players, drummers, percussionists, everything, a vocalist too. I want to say there's over like 20 people involved in the creation of this. And yet it's a free jazz collective. Like they're still playing this insanely complexly rhythmic, just wild wandering around, these solos seemingly just kind of going crazy and playing whatever comes to mind. The vocalist singing with this like wild passion, these crazy kind of apocalyptic lyrics about the fire within and the fire that draws near and all this stuff. And so I don't understand how this works. I don't understand how they can possibly kind of put it together. I think the key is that the rhythm is always very precise, that even when it's underneath all of these waves of horns flying around and this woman screaming, you can still kind of hear this really kind of, I don't know, this rhythm slowly emerges. It's very cool. Please check it out. This contains the whole thing, I'm pretty sure. Next, we're going to talk about Death from Above 1979's debut EP, Heads Up. This is like really aggressive kind of dance punk. The band is just a bassist and a drummer. So the bass is playing these like really heavy rattling riffs and the drummer is just going absolutely nuts. Their later work kind of becomes more pure in this regard. It's more just sort of the performance of them playing and singing. Whereas this is kind of layered underneath with a lot of vocal effects and synthesizers and samples that kind of lead you in and out of tracks. And it's an absolute blast. I really hope they occasionally go back to this sort of sound on the later work, and it's often my favorite parts of those later albums. But this early thing, the density of which just these kind of weird choices are made, these like robotic voices and confusing samples about cocaine, and it's nuts. Like it has this amazing kind of frantic passion to it. It's really short too. It's only 13 minutes. So check it out. It's a good one. This one I'm very curious about what people think of. This is by Aaliyah Crampton, who I just featured on Song of the Day as well. It's one of her first releases, I'm pretty sure. So I would call it an experimental sound collage of mimetic elements. And by that I mean not full-on like reference type samples, but just like the sound of a door opening, the sound of crickets, the sound of like that radio announcer voice that plays during commercials, but just sort of the essential sound aspect of it, not just saying anything. Kind of weird percussion things. It all just blends together to make this really wonderful sound collage that just slowly develops through the track. But then on other tracks, there's this guy, Money Allah, who delivers these like really kind of dispassionate but grave apocalyptic sermons that are just full of this mind-blowing imagery and this almost like trance-like recitation by him. So the balance of those two things on this release is really mind-blowing to me. And it makes the cuts from the end of those into the sound collage like re-emerging all the more powerful. So generally this sort of music is only really listened to by big music nerds. Like it's not something like an obscure metal band, let's say, who could be even more obscure than Eliza Crampton, but then your diehard metal fans will kind of like make their way to it eventually, probably. Whereas something like this, just by being into one sort of genre, you're never really going to encounter this because it is so outside of genre, so purely experimental in how it's made. So really, the only people who end up listening to music like this are people who are just big into music in general, like outside of any particular genre or movement or community. They just love finding out about music and listening to it. Like that's me. That's what I like to do. So I'm really curious. Like I think that even though this requires, like, to find it requires a lot of musical nerdiness and investment of time, to actually listen to it, I think it's quite approachable. I think this is something that a lot of people can enjoy. A lot of people could get something out of and have quite a good experience. So I'm really curious, like, what do you think of this? If you're not someone who regularly seeks out weird music, do you find this weird, or are you kind of into it? And specifically, like, are there particular sounds and stuff that stand out to you? And I think this is a way that anyone can really engage with this album, even if they don't necessarily like it or that they would turn to it as something they want to listen to a lot. I'm sure there's at least one sample choice, one movement, one development on this album that will speak to you in some way. And I'm really curious about that. Like, what kind of things touched you particularly? And that, I think, will help me really understand how this music works a little better. Okay. This is missing one of 4 tracks, which is too bad. You might be able to find it separately somewhere else on YouTube too. I don't know. I didn't look too hard to find playlists for some of these, because people have their own means of finding stuff too, I'm sure. Anyways, here we have an absolute classic, Mad Villainy. This is one of the most acclaimed albums in the careers of both MF Doom and Madlib, who are regarded as some of the greatest geniuses in hip-hop. MF Doom is just indescribable as a lyricist. I spent a while trying to figure out how to describe his lyrics, and it's just indescribable. 1 minute it's pop culture, 1 minute it's scientific illusions, 1 minute it's like really kind of conversational and feels like he's just chatting with you. The other minute it feels like you're getting this insanely poetic sermon from some lunatic professor in a laboratory. And it's something that he's really known for in all of his work, but really comes to prominence here on Mad Villainy, associated or supported by these really fantastic sample-driven beats. Madlib regarded one of the best crate diggers in history. That is someone who goes to record shops, pores over a ton of old albums, looking for unique little samples and sounds that other people hadn't thought to use yet. And he just so expertly weaves these all together. And they all of this is to tell a really comedic but oftentimes profound story of the mad villain, who's this fictional, well, they're all fictional, but kind of a villain of their creation, both of them being big comic book nerds. And it's their kind of love story and tribute to that sort of character. MF Doom, of course, a reference in itself to Doctor Doom. This is where the mask that he always wears comes from. So this is an album that you really can get deep into if you want to examine every lyric, try to line up all the references and the puns and the connections and figure out the intricacies of the story they're telling. Or you can just kind of relax and vibe out to it because it just sounds great too. Like all of the beats are super catchy and hypnotic and memorable. So it's an album that is really there for you at any level of engagement you want to give it. And there's probably never going to be a sequel. Really soon after it came out, it was getting amazing reviews and winning all sorts of year-end lists and stuff. And both of them were, at the time, like, yeah, we're going to work on together again. We're going to make a sequel. And then it just never happened. And it probably will never happen. So at least we got this, and it's great. All right, the next one I want to talk about is Jun Togawa with Vampilia, making an album called Watashi ga Nako Hotokisu. I chirp like the mockingbird. or no, the cuckoo. Sorry, not the mockingbird. The cuckoo. Um, so it's a team up between Togawa, who's like this cult underground idol, an Ura idol, I guess you would say, who made really unconventional pop music that seemed in some ways like a satire of common pop idols of the 80s, with these grim, grisly lyrics and kind of manic flights of passion in them and stuff. Just the antithesis of everything you would see in a common pop idol. And she built up this cult following, and she's remained popular for 35 years now. So to celebrate her 35th anniversary, she teamed up with Vampilia, who's this really godly, insanely powerful and talented orchestral metal band that plays with this insane, chaotic, surging style. And together they covered some of the biggest hits of her career. It sounds insane. I'm sure that sounds insane to you, that combination, but it's even more powerful than you can possibly imagine. This album will just knock you flat on your face in the best possible way. I love it. I love it. Please check it out. I had to do it. I had to do it. This is a big, big meme album. You probably recognize the cover or parodies thereof. This is a big, big meme for a long, long time, and possibly still now. I haven't really checked lately. This was the meme album on Mew, the 4chan music board, and has spread to just kind of be a meme album anywhere and everywhere. But there's kind of a reason for it. There's a reason that so many aspects of it have been exaggerated and parodied for so many years. And that's because it's really, really good. And it deserves to still be listened to and taken seriously and really enjoyed, rather than just kind of condemned to this fate of memed irreverence. But whatever. Maybe people just don't deserve it. I just had to do it, though. I think everyone should try to listen to this and really experience it. So this is extremely lively, catchy, and very interesting structurally and tonally. Indie rock jams. It's just Jeff Mangum, I don't remember, rocking out at full passion with these bizarre and convoluted love songs about Anne Frank and who knows what all is going on in his head while he sings it. It's very fascinating to kind of puzzle out, but pretty depressing. If you really think about what's going on lyrically, if you really kind of patch together what these songs are about, they're all pretty depressing in terms of subject matter, despite the music itself being so uplifting and jaunty and catchy. So it's kind of up to you, like how much you really kind of want to wade into the depths of his mind. But it is such an amazing experience, and I really, I'm a little, I don't know, I find it funny. I think all the jokes about it and stuff are funny, but I'm a little saddened that people seem to forget that there's actually a really fantastic album behind all of this. All right, here's something that's even more memey. This is just memes the music. Prince of Pisscore by $44,000. So Pisscore is a little micro genre that had a sort of flash in the pan popularity or niche popularity in like 2013, 2014. And basically it's like really memey mashups taking popular meme songs. I think there is actually some stuff from In the Airplane Over the Sea on here. Anything that people have kind of like a meta association with it, mashing it up, which has been done many, many times before. But kind of the unique part of Pisscore is that it's structured in like really intense breakcore, situated around really fast sequences and like really explosive rhythms and stuff, which I very, very much enjoy. I think it's a real blast to listen to. Like, even if you don't get the jokes, even if you don't really understand why things are being sampled or what they're being sampled from, I think it's still just a very good time. If you liked it, but you find it's just giving you a headache and it's just like too memey, the same guy also makes music as 44K, which is a lot saner, but still really good too. So check that out as well. I think this is a complete playlist. Next, we have something completely different. This is 11. Oh no, I wrote it backwards. It's 171170, but I put 111770. Whatever. This is a live performance of Elton John, whom you know as like a dad rock legend, but maybe you don't really recognize. He's someone else who's kind of been memed into irreverence. As the jokes around him have become so much bigger than himself that sometimes people might forget what made him so famous in the first place. So this is just the rawest essence of Elton John. It's him on piano. There's a bassist and a drummer. They're performing live in a studio. And it's just this all-out virtuoso performance. There's so much passion in it. Every line he sings, the way he just goes crazy on the instruments, just this wonderful, cozy feeling of all these super talented, super passionate musicians coming together to make something really special. There was an expanded version of this that I guess there was some stuff recorded in this original studio session that wasn't put on the original album that got released just recently. I haven't heard that yet. I'm like a little skeptical, honestly, because it's like they must have taken it off for a reason, right? Or I don't know. Maybe that's a little cynical of me. I'm sure it's great. I'll check it out at some point. But for me, it's the original 6-track version that really stands out, which I think is all right. Whatever. This is all just a tangent. There's like probably a million versions of this. All these old bad rock albums. It's tough to sort out how many re-releases there are, and is there stuff added to the CD that wasn't on the vinyl, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, here's another classic that I think everyone should listen to, even though it has become a meme and a legend so much bigger than itself. Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar. This is an era-defining classic of hip-hop. This is one that everything changed after this, and yet so many things in retrospect led up to it, you know. Just a triumphant cumulative achievement, an extremely emotionally enthralling portrait of this kid immersed in gang culture of culture. That should say gang culture of Compton. I'm sorry, the gang culture of Compton. It's just the story of him living his life and kind of the trouble that he finds himself in and the people around him. Very touching, very moving. You become very sympathetic to the character that emerges there. But, oh yeah, hauntingly poetic and profound. That's not but haunting. But also full of huge bangers. That for every track that almost brings a tear to your eye and you're just blown away by the poeticness and the profoundness of what he's saying and the life that's exposed. There's another track that you're just like super pumped about and that you'll be singing to yourself in your head for weeks to come. And some tracks are both. Some tracks you're not even sure which one they are. That's the power of this album. Okay. This is a good one. World's End Girlfriend is a musical polyglot, I'd call him. Someone who just seems to pick up instruments and make beautiful things out of them the way that normal people eat candy. I just wanted to... See, if I was World's End Girlfriend, some crazy sax solo would be coming out of my mouth right now. That's the effortlessness that he puts into this, but I don't know. I'm sure it's actually a lot of work. So this is what I would call like glitch orchestral music, that it has like a very bright orchestra feel, something that kind of makes you think of a triumphant march or a garden party or something like jaunty and lively like that. But then distorted and chopped up and self-sampled and stuff with all sorts of glitchy, really IDM-esque elements. This is a genre we've talked about a bit before in my top 10 genres list, where I talked about how wonderful this is. And usually World's End Girlfriend balances this with like a lot of really noisy and aggressive and abrasive stuff. But here it's just all really sweet, melodic, beautiful music. So I think this is a great entry point into him. And there's this line. I don't... On the second track, which is a remix of Nquia's Earth, there's lyrics and there's singing, and I have a hard time making really out anything she's saying, but I know that one line she says, "Shiawase ni natta," which means I have become happy. And Chiawase, in my mind at least, has like an association with like a profound and deep happiness. And whenever I get to that line, which is about halfway through this little album, I'm like, yeah, yeah, me too, me too. I have also become happy. So yeah, it's pretty great. It's pretty short. I think it's only like 20 minutes, so please check it out. Now we're going to talk about Beck's Odelay. This is funky, noisy, grungy, rap, folk, electronica. It's very hard to put this album into a genre, and yet it will kind of feel familiar. It's like very 90s-y. Like if you kind of just think about every single thing that was happening in music in the 90s, and cram it all together onto one album, it would probably sound something like this. Hopefully, to me, it seems like it's aged well, because this was one of my all-time favorite albums as a kid. It was one that my mom really liked, so she would play it a lot on car drives. And I can't remember a time before I'd heard this album. And some of my earliest memories involve trying to puzzle out what these songs were about and what he was trying to say. So in my mind, which is totally awashed in nostalgia when I hear this, it's aged really well and it still sounds very cool. But I will admit and acknowledge that a lot of the things on there are like objectively cheesy. and I think you got to go into it with this feeling that Beck is a little tongue-in-cheek too. He's always been a bit like aware, and in other ways unaware, and that unawareness is endearing too. And I don't know. I just hope you like it. But I still don't know what any of the lyrics mean, even though some of my earliest like critical thoughts that I can think of are sitting in the backseat of the car listening to Devil's Haircut and trying to figure out what the heck skeletons in jail means and stuff. And I still don't know. I don't know if there is a meaning to it. By the way, the last track, this is back in the 90s. Remember, they're doing stuff like this. It has one of those hidden track gimmicks where it just stretches on in silence for a long time. I don't think the hidden track is worth it. So when it gets quiet at the end of the last track, just be like, all right, whatever, it's time to go. Okay. This is another really beloved album. It's like almost 10 years old now, which blows my mind. I can still remember checking obsessively to see if it had leaked after like a few songs leaked out. This was probably one of the most hyped I'd ever be for an I'll ever be for an album. It came out on Christmas Day that it leaked. It was a Christmas miracle. So this is like psychedelic indie rock jams. So your kind of traditional indie rock band structure and style of singing and stuff, but with crazy sort of psychedelic wash over top of it. And then there really jams too, that it's all about kind of finding a good groove with like a nice rhythm and a nice kind of thing to chant over and over again and just riding on that for a while. The lyrics are really nice too, just nice, sunny, summery, psychedelic type vibes. Very, very pleasant to listen to. I'd say this is a real sweet spot of their work, where they have a lot of poppy elements and it's very approachable and catchy, but it's still experimental enough that they'll go for really interesting sonic places and really dive deep into these jams and not just kind of like back off in the fear of kind of scaring away parts of their audience. This was right around when they were on like the cusp of the alternative mainstream, I guess I would say. And then since then, I think their work has gotten worse. Before this, when their work was more noisy and experimental, I even like those earlier albums even better now that I've kind of listened to a lot of them more. But this still stands as a real peak, I think, between those two modes. And the end song, Brother Sport, it is a jam of a lifetime. This was another big meme on Mew, because that song leaked, I'd say about a month before the rest of the album leaked, and people were just listening to it like nonstop. Like I remember I would like just listen to it as the only song I listened to throughout like weeks on end. It's so good. It's so catchy. It's the jam of a lifetime. So yeah, please check it out. It's got the crazy optical illusion album cover. Next, we're going to talk about YMCK's Family Genesis. My friend whom I made this for, I linked him the slideshow, and I was like, I'm going to make a video too, but you don't have to wait for that. You can start listening to these if you want. He pointed out that this looks a lot like Yuiko and Chie from Persona 4. And this was the one male character that neither of us could remember the name of. But it's just a coincidence. I confirmed that it's just a coincidence, but it's a funny coincidence. So this is Japanese chiptune. It looks exactly like this album cover does. Just really fun, upbeat, poppy chiptune music with Japanese vocals. It's kind of like a tour through this imaginary game. So you can kind of imagine in your head, oh, this is the open world track, this is the cityscape track, this is like the mountain, this is the forest. And it's not really essential to the story or anything. Like it's not so complex that you need to do that. It's just that you kind of find yourself naturally imagining these sorts of places. My favorite parts are like the really fast, complex parts. Like the song Rain, there's like almost a solo at the end that's kind of like a guitar solo, and it's just mind blowing to try to follow the melody throughout it. This is missing a few tracks, unfortunately. I don't know, do your best. Ask me if you want help finding it. Next, we'll talk about Stop Making Sense. This is a live album from Talking Heads. They were just a revolutionary new wave band that makes this kind of like funky rock music. I love the sense of accumulating energy throughout this concert. It starts with David Byrne playing solo. It's just him on an acoustic guitar, and then he has like a little backing track on a tape recorder that he can toggle. And then as the album continues, more and more of the band emerges, and the songs just get like harder and harder hitting. He's like losing himself more and more to it. The final payoff at Cross-Eyed and Painless is just mind blowing. Every time it's mind blowing. Even when I'm sure that I've remembered how intense it gets, it still blows me away. And the percussion on this is absolutely nuts. I think, you know, the way that David Byrne sings and kind of the instrumentation and the synths and stuff used on new wave music is kind of hit and miss for people. Some people really latch onto it. Some people, they just are really repulsed by it. Sure. But the percussion, the musicianship and the way that the hypnotic percussion, I think anyone can appreciate. So look out for that. Next, we're going to talk about Teyana Taylor's KTSE, which stands for Keep That Same Energy. This came out just last year, but it's really quickly become one of my favorites. It's just really beautiful, soulful singing with really lush, interesting, intricate production from Kanye West. The album is just sort of this really multifaceted, just all the different parts of her life she sings about. And it's kind of interesting too, because she's not really super famous. She's not really a pop star. She's been signed to Kanye's record label for quite a while. And I think she made like a couple guest appearances. But it seems like she's just kind of living a normal life, except that she eventually is called in to make this album. And then she just kind of sings about this like, I shouldn't say like normal as if that's like dismissive, but like a non-celebrity life, if you know what I mean. Like she's singing about it, like her kids and her husband, and it's really lovely, and her mother, and it's like very inspirational too. It's like a really kind of upbeat, positive album that overall, like the message of every song is just about self-love and standing up for the things you love and standing up for yourself, and especially the song Rose in Harlem. Oh man, every time I feel like crying when I hear that song. It's just so beautiful. So yeah, check this one out. Now we get something pretty bizarre. DJ Pika Pika Pika. The 1999 album Planetary Natural Love Gas Weapon 199,999. So made in 1999, but coming from the far, far future. So this is a side project by this guy Yamataka Ai, who is an absolute god of Japanese music, one of the foundational members of Boredoms and Hantarash. Hanatarash, sorry. Usually he makes like really noisy and aggressive music, and this isn't really an exemption from that. This is just relentless, explosive drums and crazy synths and samples, and it just goes all over the world in terms of cultural influences and sounds. It's really mind-blowing. It's a little abrasive compared to his other work. It's actually like easy listening, but it does get pretty intense at times. If you really don't like it, feel free to just like skip to the next track, and usually the noisy thing will have gone away. It's very long too. It's like an hour and 12 minutes. So if you're really not feeling it, if you've given it like 15 minutes and you know that the next, you're only like 20% of the way through and you're not feeling it, just feel free, just give up. It's fine. But for a very particular type of person, for the type of person that really is excited by this sort of insane rhythmic structure, there's very few albums that scratch that itch as deeply as this. So check it out. Next we have LCD Soundsystem's Sound of Silver. This is like really catchy electronic bangers with James Murphy, that's his name, right? Yeah, singing over top of them. He's got these like very witty and yet kind of sad and poignant lyrics about his life and about the scene and what it means to be a musician and all this stuff. It's a lot of fun. The songs are super catchy, and you feel compelled to sing along with the lyrics, and then you realize that maybe you're singing something kind of sad. What a lovely experience. And this is sort of an electro evolution of Talking Heads. You can really draw a line between the musicianship of David Byrne and the musicianship of James Murphy, and the sort of things that they sing about, and the way that they sing, and the way that their songs are structured and such. But LCD Soundsystem takes certain elements of that just up to 11. So it's really fun to kind of compare those things and see those influences if you've listened to this and Stop Making Sense, which we talked about earlier. And it's all about kind of this feeling of the track building up, like one element being introduced at a time and slowly seeing this very complex picture emerge, and feeling like that itself is telling a story just as much as any of the lyrics. So yeah, it's a good one. This is another really fun one. Picky Picnic's Kudu Kudu World. It's a pretty obscure album. It's like weird pseudo kids music from Japan. They sound like children. They sing like children. They do like a take on the Do Re Mi song, da 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 da, stuff like that. There's lots of kind of goofy samples and goofy voices and things like that. And it's all about just trying to walk that line where you're almost convinced it could be legitimate children's music, and yet it's just a little unsettling that it's not quite cute. Like you're not quite sure if kids should actually listen to it. It's never quite clear. It's always ambiguous. And then sometimes it's really, really poppy and catchy. And then other times it seems to deliberately destroy that accessibility with like weird noises and atonal developments and stuff. So it walks that very, very thin line between those two things very carefully. And yet also like foolishly and extravagantly. So it's a lot of fun to listen to. I'm really a big fan of this band. They're pretty obscure, and I feel very blessed to have found out about them through a really just random encounter on Rate Your Music. But I've fallen in love. And this is another experimental music experiment, just like American Drift, where, as I said, this is quite obscure, and I think the only people listening to it are just big music nerds that are into like everything. As I said, the way I found it is I was going on Rate Your Music, and then I would look up an album that I really liked, and then I would see who'd given it 5 stars, and then what other things they had given 5 stars to. I was just bored. This was something fun, and I saw someone who had given some Picky Picnic albums 5 stars that also liked albums that I liked, and I'm like, all right, I'll check this out. And that's like probably the only way I ever could have found this. I have no idea how else I ever would have encountered it. At any rate, so again, it's pretty experimental, it's pretty strange, and it's pretty deep within music, and yet I think this is something anyone could enjoy. I really do. I think this is something that has very accessible aspects to it and very fun aspects to it. So I'm curious to see what people think. kind of throwing you into the deep end of music in general and seeing if you can have fun. So sometimes uploads of this album is bundled with one of their older albums, which is called Cynical Hysteria World. Like, I think actually the YouTube video that I link here is the back-to-back Kuda Kuda World and Cynical Hysteria World. I think it's just that when they like pressed this on CD, they had extra space, so they just threw it on there too. At any rate, Cynical Hysteria World I also really like. In some ways I like it better than Kuda Kuda World, but it is a lot more abrasive and atonal. It was before I think their goal was to hit that sweet spot. And up until that point, they were more about the overt parody of children's music and that overt kind of unsettlingness. So watch out. It's a very different experience than Kuda Kuda World, although it is very good in itself. Next, we're going to talk about Proof of Youth by the Go Team. It has a pretty rad album cover. This is exactly what the music sounds like. It's like indie rock, you know, jaunty chord-based guitar and stuff, horn and trumpet and saxophone at times too, with cool samples, and then like cheerleader rap and woman singing in Japanese, and then like a whole bunch of other stuff that I can't even describe. Like Chuck D from Public Enemy is on one of these tracks. Like, what? It's really, really catchy. These songs are stuck in your head for a long time. Super uplifting, super cheerful, positive lyrics about just getting out and doing fun stuff. But that's nicely counterplayed and mixed with other tracks that are just really kind of soothing, very nostalgic, giving you a sense of just hanging out as kids and making music. It's actually maybe like dangerously catchy and motivating. It's the sort of thing that'll make you feel like just running somewhere, and then you run to that place and you're tired and you're like, I don't really know why I'm here. Just totally chaotic spurts of action this can generate within you. So it's I love it. I love it. I love this album. Next, we have another pretty weird one. Bill Wells teaming up with Maher Shalal Hashabaz, which is the band made of Raiko Kudo and Tori Kudo, these Japanese musicians I've been really into lately. They collaborated for this thing called Osaka Bridge. So here we can see Bill Wells in the back. This is Tori Kudo, I'm pretty sure. This is his wife Reiko Kudo singing. And then there's a little orchestra that they've assembled, or a small jazz band, I guess I'd say. And it's intentionally amateurish. And this is Tori Kudo's whole kind of shtick with a lot of the music he makes. And you could call it like primitivist, I guess, where he'll intentionally find musicians who aren't really super expert level yet. And then he'll have them, without really rehearsing much or sometimes at all, record the tracks just with like a very minimal amount of guidance. And then that is kind of offset by the fact that usually he knows exactly what's going on, and then here Bill Wells on piano knows exactly what he's doing. And just this balance between kind of like nice, steady, guiding things like the piano, and then these like kind of unsteady, uncertain, kind of tipsy other musicians playing horns and drums and stuff is just so wonderful to me. I don't really know if I can put it into words, but something about it is just so warm and nostalgic. The first track is sort of dour. It's very like minor and heavy. But it's not a very good indicator for what the rest of the album is going to be like. So please, like, get through that one. I think it's a really wonderful track, but then from then on it gets a lot more lively and fun and kind of silly at times, but also very moving and as I said, just something so deeply heartwarming about it. It's all very simple songs, simple little melodies that they just kind of explore and play with. But they really linger in your head for a very long time, and you'll find that they maybe trigger like very nostalgic, wistful sensory memories. So yeah, check this one out. I'm a big fan. I've been listening to it like a ton lately. I don't think it's for everyone, but I think for the people it is for, they'll really love it. Next we have Mike and Rich with Expert Knob Twiddlers. I just love this cover so much. So this is a collaborative album between Richard D. James, aka Aphex Twin, and Mike Paradinas, aka Music, who are two absolute legends of electronic dance music, and specifically like the really kind of intricate IDM, intelligent dance music, or if there's a less obnoxious genre name that you know of, please mentally substitute that in. But that really kind of like intricate, precise electronic music that emerged in the late 90s. These two are complete innovators and revolutionators. I think I made up a word just now, of that genre. And here they team up, and they have a lot of fun. And I've heard before, I've heard like a few things over the years about this album that I don't really know what to believe of. But I know that it was like made very quickly, and it was made with both of them collaborating in person together. And it's really not surprising at all, the idea that they would be taking lots of drugs. But I've heard things like that they made the entire thing on LSD, which seems crazy to me. But, you know, they're at a point where making electronic music is kind of second nature, so maybe that sort of thing is feasible. But it really kind of comes through this fun that they're having. And you can almost feel the way that the track kind of like bounces between two ideas. Like maybe one little melody will emerge, but then another synth will kind of take over that melody and take it in a new direction. And you can almost imagine just this collaborative process that they're having of like, oh, that sounds good. Like, ooh, like maybe bump up the bass there. Like, and then maybe we should bring the drum in here. Like, I really like being able to kind of hear that sort of thing, even though in electronic music it feels like it should be so anonymized and distant. So yeah, it's just fun, funky, and there's these really awesome synths that these guys are just able to craft. I don't know how. That it really feels like, in the best possible way, that the inside of your brain is just getting like scraped out. Your ears get cleaned by these wonderful ASMR sort of synths. This that I found on YouTube is like a new version that I think got remastered, and the tracks got reordered, and there might be extra tracks. So I don't know about that. I've only listened to the original one that came out in the 90s. So I'm sure it's fine too. I don't know. And then this is the last album. This is 24 of 24. Young Thug and Gucci Mane, Young Thug and Mane, La Flair. There's no way I could have ended it without a little bit of Young Thug, one of my favorite rappers of all time. This is his team up with Gucci Mane, who is like his main mentor, the one who brought Young Thug to prominence, who has really, more than any other individual, created and developed the talent that defines Atlanta hip hop. And now Young Thug is the same kind of role for a whole new generation of rappers, which is awesome. But that's neither here nor there. This is something the two of them made together when Young Thug was still just kind of on his come up, and Gucci Mane was before his latest prison release, total body makeover redemption arc, or whatever the hell he's doing now. It was a a pretty like slapdash collaboration, I think. The title is just their names like awkwardly jammed together, because Gucci Mane is sometimes Gucci LaFleur, and then so it's Young Thug and Mane LaFleur, and then the album cover is just their faces, like and like one hand of each of them. It's so crazy, but it is what it is, and it's great. I think what makes this album and what makes their team ups just so fantastic is the contrast between Young Thug, who's one of the wildest rappers in the game, who's always yelping and shouting and doing these insanely rhythmic and melodic things, and Gucci Mane, who's all about just that like smooth, steady, sometimes like really athletic and masterful, but still very under control, very expert type of flow. So yeah, all the tracks on here are bangers for sure. Very catchy, very fun to rap along with, and they work so well together. It's a real peanut butter and chocolate sort of thing. The only version I could find of it on YouTube that has all of the songs has really annoying DJ tags. This is DJ, can't really see. It's like, so when mixtapes are shared around, um, often every single person in the distribution chain will advertise themselves by recording themselves shouting over a bunch of the tracks, such that if you find something that's like very far away from the source, it's like 5 or 6 people at the start of every track just like shouting their names. It's like, what the hell is this? How is this supposed to make me think positively of you? So like the DJ Holiday tags, you know, like they make sense that they're there because DJ Holiday is the one that like hosts this mixtape. He's the one that I guess arranged it to be made and put all the tracks together or something. I don't really know. But then, so like the one I have just has the DJ Holiday tags, and then I've seen a wide variety of YouTube uploads that have just like all these other people. It's like, who are you? But yeah, that's the best I could do. You'll like they shut up after a bit, so you can still enjoy most of it. Anyways, that's it. Those are 24 albums for 24 hours of runecrafting. This is something I kind of just did on the spur of the moment, and it took a while, but I really enjoyed the process of making it. And I hope you enjoy some of the albums if you choose to check them out. Please let me know what you thought. I love sharing music with people. I love the idea of people getting into music. I just love music in general. So doing things like this makes me very happy. So yeah, check the description. I'll link this presentation, and then you can very easily go check them out and vote on them and stuff like that. Okay, that's all for now. Bye-bye.